3 years ago, after months of searching online, I finally found the 6-speed all-wheel drive turbo vehicle that I was looking for, my 2011 Audi A4 Quattro. And you're probably asking, why the hell didn't you go with an S4 or an Evo or something like that? And I don't really have much of an explanation besides I like turbocharged vehicles, I like to be comfortable, and it's really all I could reasonably, responsibly afford at the time. Plus, I sort of like to have the underdog vehicle, like not getting the top of the line performance one and using the one that maybe wasn't meant exactly for performance from the factory, but building it to kind of what you wanted. Since I bought this car, I've installed an intake, an exhaust, aftermarket engine mounts, an aftermarket diverter valve, a front-mount intercooler and piping kit, better brakes, and an ECU tune. And of course, wheels and air suspension. But even with all of that, I'm still not entirely satisfied with the performance of this entry-level luxury sedan. I like how it looks, I like how it drives, but it could be a little more rowdy. That's where CTS Turbo comes in. This is the Boss 500 Garrett GTX 2867R Turbo Kit for the B8 A4. CTS teased us with the kits for the Mark 6 and Mark 7s, so you can imagine my excitement when they finally released the kit for the B8. So obviously, I had to jump on it. And that makes you probably question, why didn't this idiot just get an S4? It's a good question, but we're here now and there's no going back. In this series, I'll be installing this turbo kit with hopes of gaining substantially more power than my stock KO3 can produce, without blowing up, of course. Now, the whole point of this kit is to work without any extra modification to the car. So essentially, I could put it in the car without any extra modifications, just get a tune, and it'd be good. But I want to be extra careful with this, considering the 2.0 can be a little finicky. So, in addition to the turbo, I'll be installing an aftermarket aluminum intake manifold by Integrated Engineering, and an aftermarket clutch, just to make sure that my transmission and everything can handle the power. So, enough talk, let's get to it. First up, intake manifold. Compared to the last time you saw this car, our garage situation has become less than ideal. But we're working with what we got, and luckily everything we're working on this time is just under the hood. To start off, we've got to remove the stock intake manifold. These plastic intake manifolds in this generation of Audis and VWs actually have been known to cause some problems. Namely, the mechanical runner flaps that modulate airflow going into the engine are prone to breaking, and they restrict airflow. Plus, it's quite ugly. So, of the few options available for this platform, I went with Integrated Engineering's aluminum manifold. It deletes the runner flaps altogether and allows for much more airflow, and has the option for port injection in case I decide to up the power down the road. Plus, it also really solves the problem of the ugly plastic manifold. At this point, I've already removed my charge pipe and catch can lines. Then it's just a handful of bolts on top and bottom of the manifold holding it to the head, like this one I showed to the camera for some reason. And as with any car from Germany, you guessed it, plenty of difficult and hidden vacuum lines and electrical connections. This is actually the second time I've had to remove the intake manifold on this car, first time for carbon cleaning, so I've got a decent memory of what to remove. But if you did want more direct instructions on how to install an aftermarket manifold, instead of going into it blind like I always do, IE actually provides their own instructions on their website. You can sort of see here how the runner flaps work inside of the intake. But with that, everything is disconnected and ready to come out.
Ow! Okay. Ta-da! It's off.
For the most part, Integrated Engineering designed this manifold to accept everything from the stock one, with very slight modification. They provide an install kit for every specific application, so I got one for the B8 A4, which means I won't be left running to the parts store for things like gaskets and hoses and whatnot. Because the runners are so much thicker than the stock intake runners, the amount for the fuel rail actually needs to be trimmed down a bit, which can easily be done with a little bit of grinding. So these bits right here start a little bit too close to the intake runners, so I just need to grind them out a little bit so these will fit on and they can thread the fuel rail back onto the new intake manifold. So just gotta grind it out, safety first. With that trim to fit, everything bolts up, and we can continue transferring over the rest of the stock components, like the modified fuel rail, fuel lines, and vacuum bungs, onto the new manifold. Also, in addition to some cool stickers, they also included a koozie in the box, which is pretty neat. After making sure everything on the inside is completely cleaned out of the new manifold, everything gets tightened down, including the shiny new IE plenum plate. With the new rubber O-rings installed, the manifold is ready to go in. So everything is installed in here, as far as I know. It was pretty straightforward, simple installation. After I got the fuel rail all ground out, fit on just fine, got it on there, and then all these vacuum related things are on there, and then got this IE plate on the top, the fuel rail, and a little bracket to hold some of the sensors, and it's all good to go. So I'm going to attempt to install this onto the car. Oh, we also put gaskets on there. Those are important. Got to make sure some of these wires are out of the way because that fuel rail wants to go right back to where it used to live. And you want to make sure it seats well, because otherwise your injectors might have a leak, then you'll leak fuel everywhere, and that's not what you want. But that looks pretty damn good. All right, so I'm just gonna get on with installing, put everything kind of back how it went, obviously with the new hardware versus the old hardware. Hook everything back up. Yeah, keep on going. Installing the new manifold is about as complicated as removing the original. It's not too tough, but lots of small spaces for my big fat hands, surrounded by sharp edges, so you definitely don't want to have to do this twice if you don't have to.
It's leaking. Yeah.
So it's a new day. Last night didn't go exactly as planned. Basically, we screwed up. As I understand it, I'm supposed to put the injectors in the manifold before putting the manifold onto the head. So when I put the manifold on, it basically screwed up all of the injector seals, all the O-rings on the back of the injectors. So I went to the parts store this morning, got 4 new injector seal kits, and now gonna try again. Got to take the manifold off, put the injectors into the manifold, and then set it in. Hopefully no leaks this time. So there we go.
I've been feeling restless.
So, like any car project, I had to redo what I already spent hours doing. This is definitely one of those, this should only take maybe an hour kind of lies I've told myself. But even with resealing each of the injectors one by one and seating them in the fuel rail, this was actually a pretty quick fix and really only did take about an hour or two.
All the noise and all the chaos. I only want to hear the sound of the earth. I only want to feel the ground underneath. No pavement, no concrete, just leaves and my heartbeat. I only want to hear the sound of the earth. Buildings into mountains, streams instead.
So I'm back on track in no time. With everything in properly this time, it's time to start it once again. This time with no leaks.
Flowing through the screen, passing over me. All the noise and all the chaos. I only want to hear the sound of the earth. I only want to feel the ground underneath. No pavement, no concrete, just leaves and my heartbeat. I only want
Well, I call this a pretty successful install. Aside from a few small problems, I think everything went pretty well, and the car drives surprisingly well, even without a tune to compensate for the intake manifold. I think it's time for us to install a clutch. So, see you next week, where we'll be installing a clutch in a adequately sized garage.